What's up, Tiger fans? I'm Evan Henry. On behalf of the JSU Tiger Fund Athletic Foundation, I would like to ask for your support for the JSU Athletic Campaign known as JSU by 40. Participants in the JSU by 40 campaign are asked to contribute $40 or any amount. Your gift of any amount will help provide much needed support to help JSU athletics excel in every single sport. Give today at gojsutigers.com/JSU by 40. Your gift will definitely make a difference. Go JSU Tigers.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head over to our online casino for blackjack, poker, or one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here.
Tiger fans, welcome to another episode of Tiger Talk TV. I am the Corey C. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and turn on that notification bell so you do not miss a single upcoming episode. You can find us on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to follow the show and tell every Tiger that you know. And remember, when you support Tiger Talk TV, it all helps the cause, which is the I love Jackson State University. All right, well, this game needs no introduction. Let's get right to it. The BoomBox Classic. And joining me, as always, to let us know about the Southern Jags is an award-winning writer for The Advocate down in Baton Rouge, Mr. Jim Klein-Peter. Welcome back to Tiger Talk TV.
Thank you for having me, Corey.
Our fans love seeing your face and hearing your voice because that can only mean one thing. It's time. It's that time of the year, BoomBox Classic. So we're ready for it. But first things first, safety first. How's the weather down in Baton Rouge, at least at the time of this recording?
Oh, it's not too bad right now. I think we're gonna catch it pretty heavy later on tonight. And from what I understand, the winds aren't going to be as bad. But we're gonna get a lot of rain. And people here are used to this, so they know what to do. So they hunker down. They go get their batteries and their candles and everything, and just wait it out.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, we hate having this type of weather, but we're glad that it came when it came. It's not going to interrupt the game. It should be we'll have passed through and we'll have some beautiful weather. So we're looking forward to that. But how has it or how is it expected to affect Southern University, the campus, and the football team in terms of preparation and things like that?
Well, they shut down the campus yesterday at 1 o'clock, and I think the football team didn't have any problem practicing. They probably just practiced in the stadium on the artificial turf. Today, they're probably going to have to practice inside just because of the rain. I don't know how much we're going to get, but the outer bands of the hurricane are starting to hit, I guess. And so it's going to dump a lot of water. We don't have a lot of wind. It's not really dangerous to be outside, just unless you don't want to get wet. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll probably be able to get an indoor practice in. And then the storm's supposed to move through tonight. So if nothing gets damaged, they'll probably be able to practice tomorrow, maybe even outside like they normally do, and then probably bus up to Jackson on Friday. So I don't see the hurricane creating too big of an issue.
Awesome. All right. That's what we love to hear. Safety, obviously. And, we don't want that preparation to be interrupted. We want both teams at full strength. No excuses on either side, right? All right. So let's talk some football. As we said, the BoomBox Classics, one of the best rivalries in not only HBCU football, but college football as a whole, whether it's in Jackson, Baton Rouge, and Superdome in the years past. But whether it counts in the standings or not, it doesn't really matter. So let's start here. Southern, of course, has a new head coach this season. Longtime assistant Terrence Graves takes over after serving as a special teams coordinator, linebackers coach, and even interim head coach at one point. So go back and take us through what you can recall about that coaching search and ultimately his permanent hiring.
Well, they had given Eric Dooley a nice contract. He was getting significantly more money than the previous full-time coach Dawson Odoms, and to get rid of him after 2 years, it kind of hurt them financially. Terrence Graves was a pretty safe hire. He understood Southern. He put in a lot of years at Southern. Back when he played for Pete Richardson at Winston-Salem State, then followed him there and coached at Southern for several years. About half of his coaching career has been at Southern. So he was when you break it all down, probably a logical choice. It helped Southern with its transition. You kind of maintain some commonality. They didn't have to change too much. They didn't change a lot of assistant coaches. Everybody on the staff knew Terrence. He brought in guys like Fred McNair, and he already had Willie Totten on the staff, and so he had guys. He had a feel, and it was his time to become a coach, and I think everybody's kind of happy for him. And I don't think anybody would disagree with me when I say this is a much better coach team than it was the past 2 seasons. So I think so far it's been a good move. And I'll tell you what, if anything made the fans happy, it was the fact that they've already decided they're going with Xavier Tissett at quarterback. This is a move Eric Dooley refused to make at any point the last 2 years. And so if he's won any credibility, it's just with that.
Wow. Talk a little bit more about his temperament. What has that been like since he's taken over, and a little bit more about that transition from Dooley to Graves?
Yeah, Coach Graves he's a player's coach. He was a player. He's always been kind of a coach on the field. His whole life, he loved the strategy of football. He loved thinking about what do you do? What do you actually do? What are you thinking about? How do you attack the other team? He was a defensive back at Winston-Salem State, started his career at Wake Forest. And I think he understands players' mentalities. He understands that a part of his job is making good football players, but he really talks a lot about making them into men. And he cites all of the people that did that for him, particularly Pete Richardson. And when you invoke Pete Richardson's name at Southern, everybody will say, okay, that's good. So I think it's been a lot like that. The players like him. The players were very happy when he was named the interim coach last year. Okay. They were very, very happy to have him like that. He's again, like I said, a player's coach, and but he does understand the discipline, and he did actually get all over this team at halftime just last Saturday because they didn't show up for their home opener. They were playing bad in all 3 phases, but he lit into them at halftime, and they looked like a different team in the second half.
Yep, absolutely. So he split his first 2 games as head coach, and both teams, Jackson State and Southern, are going into this matchup at 1-1. So give us a quick recap of those first 2 games. You talked about starting slow in that second game and finishing strong, but go back to that first game, the season opening loss.
Yeah, they were in control of that game, the first game with McNeese, and I really expected them to win the game. They lined up to kick a field goal that would have given them a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter with about 11 minutes left. And inexplicably, the kicker kicked a low kick. It hit one of the Southern players in the back. The ball bounced back about 40 yards. Wow. I mean, the players had to go run it down. For the McNeese players ran it down, ended up with the ball inside the 10, scored to tie the game. The next series, they go 3 and out, and the punter, the all-conference punt snapper, snaps the ball over the punter's head. Again, McNeese has got the ball inside the 10, another touchdown. Now they're down. And then the defense, which played great all night, it couldn't hold up. The offense couldn't really give Southern anything. And they went to Tissett late in the game, but it was probably too late to get anything done. So that was a disappointing a game that Southern pretty much, I wouldn't say they dominated it, but they were in control for 3 quarters and then just let it get away. And then last week is really kind of disappointing for me as an impartial observer to see Southern come out and play so poorly, particularly the quarterback, Noah Bowden. He was absolutely awful. He lasted 4 series. Southern managed to get a field goal out of the first 4 series. But his passes were awful. He threw an interception. Southern found itself trailing against the Division II opponent. And then wow, boom, they went to Savian T-set for the fifth series, and he immediately led them to a field goal, then threw a touchdown pass on the next series, and then they were off and running. Once they came out of halftime, he led them to 4 more touchdowns and 4 more touchdowns in the second half.
So was there any quarterback controversy after that first game where there talks of maybe making a switch, or do you think Botton's first half play triggered that change?
Well, to me, in my eyes, I knew they couldn't go back to Bowden as a starter this week. They couldn't, because that's how bad he was. And I mean, he wasn't that bad in the McNeese game, but this was against a Division II opponent. He was just awful, and I don't know what the problem was there. I don't know if the whole thing kind of caught up to him in his head, and I don't know what happened to him. I couldn't possibly think. I thought he played better, and he played worse against a worse team. So it just didn't compute. And after the game, we asked Graves about it, and he said, "Well, we'll look at it, and then we'll decide, going forward." Well, by Monday, I'm sorry, no, by Tuesday at noon, before they'd even had a practice, they'd already decided they were going with T-set. That was yesterday. And usually, a lot of times a coach he wants to spare the quarterback who he's replacing. He doesn't want to lose him. And so they'll say, well, we'll make our decision at game time. But Graves came right out and said, no, we're going to go with T-set. But we think that, we're going to still need Bowden later this season. So we need to keep him coached up. We need to keep him interested in competing, because it's you never know when you're going to get an injury. And T-set isn't, hasn't made a start yet in college, and that's happening this weekend.
So let's go all the way back to the camp battle between the quarterbacks. Was it a foregone conclusion throughout camp that Bowden would be the starter, or was that a real battle? Did he win it in the end, or how'd that play out?
I think it was a real battle, and I don't think anybody was real surprised that Bowden won the battle. He had more experience, but sometimes you can overplay that. And I think what we got here is you got a player, and I think Coach Graves knew that they were going to play T-set this year. That they could not keep him from playing because he was that good, that at some point in the season he might take over. But he was definitely going to get some snaps. And I'm not talking about garbage time snaps. I'm talking about snaps when the game's on the line. And he even confided in some of his friends that, he's going to play this year because he's that good. Well, you know what? He came in. I was real surprised because he looked 100% better than Bowden. He looked confident. He looked like he knew where he was going with the ball. He made his reads. He's a better runner, and he had better pocket presence. You can watch these quarterbacks, and some of the quarterbacks are slow to make moves, or they're slow to step away from the rush. And that's what Bowden was. He got sacked twice just because he didn't move away from the rush fast enough, or he didn't step up in the pocket at the right time. Well, T-set comes in there, and he got sacked one time, but he was stepping up in the pocket. He was stepping into the clear, creating some time for him to be able to make a completion, and that's what he did. He hit a lot of passes after he moved around in the pocket or rolled out or found some daylight. And he didn't just take off and run. Now, he did run a couple of times, but he found guys. He hit people on these. He hit tight ends on these crossing patterns. Yep. He was very effective with that, and threw 3 touchdown passes. So that's why I'm saying, he looked like he was ready for the moment.
Definitely. I mean, he's overall in the season, he's 18 for 32, 330 yards and 3 touchdowns, obviously playing well. Has Coach Graves hinted at whether he expects T-Set to go the distance, assuming he's playing well going forward, or if Boston will kind of come in as well?
I think that I don't think there's any doubt if T-Set is not having any major issues, he's going to, the job is his to lose now. Bowden will probably, they probably will want to play him some. But if T-Set plays like he did Saturday night, and it's going to be hard to do that against Jackson State this week and some of these other SWAC defenses. But if he continues playing like that, the job's going to be his, and Bowden's going to be the backup. And again, it's a long season, and quarterbacks get hurt, and sometimes they get hurt in practice. So you've got to have somebody that you can at least count on going out there and getting the team into the play and getting them to the line of scrimmage and getting the offense set and having Bowden like that. I mean, it's nice having somebody with some experience. You think he probably won't go out there and completely panic like a freshman might.
Jim, let's get into the rest of this offense, starting with the new offensive coordinator, Mark Frederick, who comes over from Prairie View. What type of system and play style has he looked to implement for this offense?
Well, this is he learned under Mark Orlando, the former Southern offensive coordinator who worked for Pete Richardson, and Pete Richardson too. He's influenced by both. The truth is, though, so was Eric Dooley, but Eric Dooley had his own ideas. And Eric Dooley liked to throw the ball. He didn't have a good quarterback in either of his 2 years. So I don't think Eric Dooley ever really got to implement the type of offense he wanted to. But Mark Frederick is much more tied to the run game. Okay. And one of the first things they did, they wanted to get Southern back to being physical. And if you watch Southern the last 2 years under Dooley, that offense got worse as the season went on. And it wasn't even like that hard to see. You didn't have to be a football Svengali to see how bad, that they got worse as the season went on. So I think one thing about Mark Frederick is one thing they're doing is they're using tight ends. They're running a lot of two tight end formations, and they're running out of those and also passing, and they got athletic tight ends. So I think you're going to see them work a little harder at being physical and establishing the run and working the pass game off of that. So, they're not going to fill the air with footballs like Dooley wanted to. And I don't even think really he was ever able to do that. But Frederick is really emphasizing the run game. I think you'll see that on Saturday.
Yeah. And of course, Coach Frederick also doubles as the running backs coach. So no wonder he's implementing that run game. But he has two familiar names to work with in that backfield. Kobe Dillon, who it seems like he's been there forever, and then Kendrick Rhymes, a preseason all-SWAC selection. But he's currently averaging only 3.2 yards per carry, and he only has 81 yards rushing in 2 games. And then Dillon is only averaging 3.8 yards per carry with 104 yards in 2 games. So just judging by the stats, it appears that they're both struggling a bit. Would you agree with that? And if so, what would you attribute that to?
They are because Coach Graves even talked about the running backs had some struggles, but I think it's more indicative of an offensive line that has 2 starters back. They got a lot of new players, including they're starting a former Jackson State. Well, a guy that had committed to Jackson State, Courtney Lyles. He's their starting right tackle.
He was there for a couple weeks.
But yeah, so that offensive line didn't play very well against McNeese, and they played better. I have to say they did look better, but it's hard to tell if they were better because they were going against a Division II team or not. But that's part of the problem too. Rhymes got off to a bad start. He got on the red list. He was held out of the first quarter of the McNeese game for disciplinary reasons. Okay. But he got back in there, and he looked a little bit better last week. Coach Graves talked about how they've got to follow the scheme and make the cuts in the right time. He was talking about the running backs there, but they have a good stable of running backs, and I think they're going to be okay there. Rhymes is a guy you want in there because he's a good receiver too. He's got good hands. He could play receiver if he was absolutely called upon. So they're going to be probably throwing to him a lot, because I'm sure T-Set's going to see a lot of pressure from Jackson, and they're going to have to go to the safety valve receivers in this offense.
And then from a receiving standpoint, and I know you mentioned those tight ends a couple times already, it seemed like they've been the biggest threat from a receiving standpoint for the Jags. Jermaine Minor Jr. and then Dupree Fuller, they've combined for 7 catches and a score. That was last week. And they lead the receiving units with 99 and 90 yards in 2 games, respectively. This should probably come as no surprise if you look at who the position coach is. You mentioned him as well, Fred McNair. So let's go back to that hiring for a second, if you will. What do you remember? It caught a lot of people off guard. What do you remember about that, and how big of a surprise was it for you and just down in Baton Rouge in general to land a guy like that as a position coach?
Well, it's one of those. It was a symbiotic hire. It helps Fred McNair because he probably didn't have to sell his house and move. He wasn't going to have to sell. He was going to have to probably sell his house and move to Houston if he had gotten a Texas Southern job. But he's only about 2 hours from Baton Rouge, and so I'm not saying that he's commuting, but it's close to home, and I'm sure it's a 1-year deal where he'll probably get hired by somebody next year for next year. So, but the players love him. I mean, the tight ends love him, and he loves being there. These SWAC coaches, they all work together at some point. They all know each other. They were joking about how Willie Totten and Fred McNair were trying to see which of the old timer quarterbacks could still throw it and practice a couple of times. So they were getting a kick out of that. But the tight ends love McNair, and they're getting the benefit of a guy who actually coached some good tight ends at Alcorn State. And he doesn't just understand, coaching tight ends. He understands the offense, and he can bring a lot of insight for those players that they might not get. A lot of times the tight end coach is a young upcoming coach who just finished his first year as a grad assistant, and it's a recruiting position. You hire somebody who can recruit, but having somebody like Fred McNair is a big bonus for Southern. And I think he really likes being there. He seems like a very happy guy. I had a short interview with him, and he seems like a very, very happy to be in this situation.
You mentioned the utilization of the tight ends. It seems like it's been a point of emphasis to get the tight ends as well as the running backs. You mentioned that as well, involved in the passing game. I noticed that in the second half against Savannah State, they repeatedly dragged both of those units across the middle of the defense for big gains. So is that something that they've really been focusing on?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it was multiple times where it was just this drag route after the Savannah State was dropping back into a zone, and the tight end was just running a drag route underneath the zone, and there wasn't anybody there. So, and you just had to lead him a little bit and hit him in the hands, and they even got a touchdown out of one of those plays. Dupree Fuller got to show his athleticism. He ran over a tackler right at the goal line and got in the end zone. So that's that's something that Jackson State will have to look for. But then again, if they move up on that, then you hit them over the top. So Southern's it looks like their offense is getting an identity finally, and maybe we'll see it a little more. It'll come a little more into focus this weekend. But the tight ends, 7 catches for the tight ends. I don't think they had 7 catches in the whole 2 years under Dooley.
Wow.
Wow. That's huge for Southern. This is gonna be an offense that moves the chains and tries for the big play occasionally, but focuses on moving the chains.
And looking at that wide receiver unit, who are some guys who need to step up and help out T-Set and those tight ends?
Oh yeah, Chandler Whitfield. He's the old veteran. He's been around for several years. He's been this is his 3rd year as a starter. He's a good slot receiver, good speed, good athlete. He's good on deep routes. They got Tyler Kirkwood, who he's been around for a while. He's a big target. So they brought in some new guys too. They got a kid named Darren Morris. He's a hometown kid from Southern Lab. He got a touchdown. He caught a touchdown pass also. And a really good athlete, a really good receiver on those 50-50 balls. Good size and good strength. He knows how to use his body to block out the defensive back. So, and they've got receivers that we haven't really had a chance to see them. It's not Jamarius Brown, but Dartavian Brown, I think is his name. Some guys that they brought in Cameron Jackson, guys like that are, just waiting to get a chance. And I think maybe we'll see that this weekend.
And then, Jim, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the Jags were pretty stout in conference play last season, only giving up 20 points per game. And the D-line was the strength of that team. And it looks to be the case as well this season, led by SWAC preseason player of the year, Mr. Givens. So talk about that unit, and Givens is living up to those expectations so far.
Yeah, Givens is going to get a lot of attention. He's going to get double teamed. He's a really good player, I know it's a miracle Southern was able to keep him, because he was the ideal for the transfer portal for for maybe a higher level team trying to hoping to shore up a position. He can play. He's bulked up to about 245. But he's going to get a lot of attention, and what they're hoping is that the other end, Darius Harry, will benefit from that. He's a good pass rusher who he played part-time last year, but he's a starter this year and has provided a good pass rush. Davin Cotton at tackle is in the best shape of his career. He's the healthiest he's ever been since he got to Southern. He transferred from LSU. He was a 4-star recruit and had signed at LSU. And he had a knee injury his first year, and last year it was like he hadn't really recovered from it. It was still slowing him down. He gained weight. He cut some weight. He's a lot better. He's not one of your big big bulky run stoppers. He's about 285. And he's quick. He's a good penetrator, so they're getting that out of him. They got Willie Miles and Zach Yassine who are back, and Darius Jackson, who's another, I think, a former Jackson State player, who's one of the players in there too. So their front line is good, and then they've got Derek Williams at linebacker. He's been probably their best linebacker for the last 3 years. Just really good player out of Miami, good speed, very physical. He was a little bit banged up last year. He sat out spring, and he came back in the fall, very, very healthy. They added Vincent Page. They've got Josh Tate. They've got a lot of depth, probably the most depth they've ever had in the 3 years that Henry Miller has coordinated this defense.
Would you say the defense overall is the strength of the team as opposed to the offense?
I don't think there's any question about it. They're so far ahead of the offense right now. They're 3 deep. They can rotate players in, even if they get an injury. They're good. They got this safety, Jamarius Brown, who had an outstanding game against McNeese. He had a PBU. He had a sack. Very physical safety, the kind of guy, he can cover, but he can run the alley and blitz. And got Rodney Johnson, who's a track star for Southern, in addition to playing cornerback, who's a 3-year starter now. And a freshman named Eric Reed at the other cornerback, who has just been a huge find for them. This is a true freshman. They brought him in, and he's playing really well. But they've got a lot of depth back there again. Horatio Johnson, Luke Rose, Marcus Bourne is the nickelback. So lots of depth, lots of guys that have played significant playing time. And even if they didn't start, and they're patient because they know everybody's going to get to play a little bit. And man, I'm telling you, they held. I know Savannah State's Division II, but they held them to 65 yards. And 81 yards came on one play. Just a miss. It's one of those missed tackles by the sidelines. I think the defense thought the quarterback was going to run out of bounds, and he just kind of hit a burst of speed, went right by a tackler, and then went 81 yards. And I'm sure that really rankles. It really rankles that defensive staff that they let that happen. Otherwise, Savannah State would have had negative yardage for the game. So that's huge. This is a good defense.
And let's go back to the special teams. You mentioned some mishaps earlier, but Southern returns a preseason all-SWAC selection at long snapper, which you mentioned, as well as kicker. But like I said, they had a few issues in that department, at least against McNeese. So were they able to kind of correct that and shore up some things against Savannah State?
Yeah, Joshua Griffin, who's from Vicksburg, really, really good kicker. I mean, this kid's got a chance to kick in the NFL. His the first it wasn't a blocked field goal against McNeese. It was a botched field goal. That's how Coach Graves keeps saying it, because he just kicked it too low and it hit the back of one of the Southern players. And they chalked that up to Griffin going to a kicking camp and changing, fiddling with his approach. And so they kind of got that fixed. He hit 3 beautiful field goals. All 3 field goals that he kicked against Savannah State would have been good from another 10 yards. And he had a 49-yarder and a 44-yarder plus a 38-yarder. All of them very well, right down the middle, no doubt about any of them. They did have one blocked, and that was a blocking issue on the line, and it led to Savannah State's other score on a field goal. But it looks like they got their punting issues straight. They didn't have any bad snaps. They only punted twice. They picked up this punter, Kenny Pham from Alcorn State,
yep.
and he really did a good job in the first game. He got Southern out of some holes with some nice kicks, that good hang time, good distance, and he did fine the other night against Savannah State too. So I think Southern's special teams are in good shape for now. We'll see what happens this weekend.
Absolutely. And Jackson State will go into this game as most likely as the favorite, but in a rivalry game like this, of course, you can throw all that out of the window. So what would you say are some keys to victory for Southern to come in and get the win?
Yeah, I think that what you want to do, okay, I mean, T-Set looked good last week, but he's making his first start, and that's going to be a little bit of a different environment. And in fact, all week leading up to the game, that pressure is going to build on him. And this is Jackson State. This isn't Savannah State. And I'm sure Jackson State, their first order of business is to try to rattle, the redshirt freshman. And so I think Southern, I always say this when a guy's making his first start or there's some kind of an issue about experience. They probably want to give him some easy completions early in the game, not give him, get him off to a good start, because Southern started so badly against Savannah State, and there's really no reason for it. If they start badly against Jackson State, they'll be out of the game before the first quarter's over. So if they have another bad start, so I think they definitely want to start better than they did last week, and I think. I think one thing on defense sometimes is one thing they're going to want to do, and looking at Jackson State's quarterbacks, they've got a couple of talented quarterbacks that can run and pass, and so they want to be careful not to overcompensate and try to make every play. Just focus on doing their job and use the defense as a whole to try to slow down these two quarterbacks. I'm assuming that Jackson State's going to play both of them, because this McCoy kid looks like he's really the real deal.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, we're expecting beautiful weather, and we already know what the atmosphere will look like. So we're looking forward to a great game as always with these two teams. 6:00 kickoff, but also streaming on ESPN Plus. So, will you be making that trip?
I'll be there. I'm driving in Saturday.
Okay, well, be safe. Let's get through this weather, and we look forward to seeing you. Looking forward to seeing the Jags, and we look forward to a great game.
Thank you, Corey.
All right, thank you as always.
Tiger Talk TV is presented by Bet Online.